The vessel cut through the upper atmosphere of Terra Prime, like a blade through silk, its sonic disruption suppressed by Zolorian dampening technology. Major Mara Thorne stood at the observation deck, her posture rigid as she studied the blue-white sphere below. This was her 27th planetary survey mission, and like the others, it promised to be a simple affair: land assess catalog and prepare for the inevitable Zolorian expansion. Atmospheric composition analysis complete. Major Lieutenant Colleen Voss reported, her voice calm as the holographic readouts flickered before her. Nitrogen-oxygen mix with trace elements consistent with preliminary scans. Surface temperature at drop zone -42 degrees. Habitable with standard issue thermal enhancement. Mara nodded without turning. The year 2376 had been productive for the Zolorian Empire's Frontier Scout Division. 3 new planetary acquisitions each, rich with resources that would fuel the Empire's continued expansion across the stars. Terra Prime was just the latest jewel to be added to the crown, a frozen world at the edge of charted space. But preliminary scans showed promising mineral deposits beneath its icy surface. And the natives, Mara asked, her voice betraying no emotion. Colleen swiped through several screens of data. Primitive by our standards. Pre-interstellar civilization. Biologically human-adjacent with some unusual genetic markers our xenobiologists are still analyzing. Intelligence assessment suggests minimal resistance capability. Mara finally turned from the viewport, a thin smile crossing her features. Another precious world, then. The term had become something of an inside joke among Zolorian expansion forces. Precious, the designation for worlds whose inhabitants possessed valuable genetic material or cultural artifacts worth preserving in the Zolorian archives before full resource extraction commenced. The Empire had a policy of relative benevolence toward such populations. They would be permitted to exist in designated preservation zones, while Zoloria harvested their world's resources. A humane approach by Imperial standards. Prepare the survey team, Mara ordered, striding toward the command center. I want boots on the ground within the hour. Standard protocol: observe, document, and avoid engagement unless absolutely necessary. The command center hummed with activity as technicians and officers prepared for planetfall. Holographic displays showed topographical maps of the landing zone, a vast ice basin surrounded by jagged frost-covered mountains. Intelligence suggested a small settlement of natives approximately 30 kilometers south of their intended landing site. Major called out Communications Officer Darian Reed, his brow furrowed. We're picking up something unusual. Mara moved to his station, leaning over his shoulder to view the display. Define unusual, Officer Reed. It's a signal, ma'am, artificially generated coming from the northern icefield. It's an SOS. SOS, Mara frowned. That's an ancient Earth distress code. There shouldn't be anyone on this rock using that protocol. The signal is degraded, but unmistakable. Reed confirmed, adjusting parameters on his console. It's been broadcasting for approximately 72 standard hours, according to the decay pattern. Mara's eyes narrowed. This was unexpected. Intelligence reports had indicated no advanced communications technology among the natives. Could it be from a previous Zolorian expedition? Negative, Major, Colleen replied, joining them at the communication station. This would be the first official Zolorian presence in this system. A silence fell over the command center as the implications set in. Either intelligence was wrong about the technological capabilities of Terra Prime's inhabitants, or someone else had reached this world before them. Alter our landing coordinates, Mara decided after a moment. I want us down 5 kilometers from that signal's origin point. Full defensive protocols. Lieutenant Voss, prepare a specimen retrieval team. We'll collect samples from the area and withdraw. Understood, Major. As the ship adjusted its descent trajectory, Mara returned to the viewport. Terra Prime's icy surface loomed closer, its vast white plains broken only by black jagged mountain ranges and occasional dark patches that might be liquid methane lakes. Something about this mission felt different from the others. A prickle of unease traced its way down her spine, a sensation she hadn't felt since her early days as a cadet. "Deployment in 3 minutes," announced the ship's AI. "All personnel to designated stations." Mara turned away from the viewport and headed toward the armory. Whatever awaited them on the surface of Terra Prime, the Zolorian Empire would be ready. The landing was smooth Zolorian technology, compensating for the howling winds that whipped across the icy plain. Mara led the survey team out of the shuttle, her exosuit automatically adjusting to the brutal cold. Before them stretched an endless expanse of ice, glittering under the pale light of Terra Prime's distant sun. "Signal origin is 2 kilometers northeast," Colleen reported through the comm system. "Readings indicate a small structure partially buried in the ice." Mara nodded, gesturing for the armored scout units to take point. 12 sleek, heavily armed mechs moved forward in formation, their sensors probing the surrounding area for any signs of life or hostility. "Advance with caution," she ordered. "Remember, observe, document, withdraw. No unnecessary risks." They proceeded across the ice, the wind howling around them like some primordial beast. The scout mechs left barely a trace on the hardened surface, their weight distribution systems preventing them from breaking through the frozen crust. Behind them came the collection team specialists trained in rapid sample gathering and environmental assessment. As they approached the signal's origin, a dark shape emerged from the swirling snow. A structure artificial angular and clearly not of natural formation. "Hold position," Mara commanded, raising a closed fist. The formation stopped immediately. "Initial assessment." One of the scout mechs moved forward, its sensors scanning the structure. "Construction appears to be composite materials, metal alloy frame with synthetic polymer sheathing. Architecture is unfamiliar, doesn't match known Zolorian or catalogued alien designs. Age estimate approximately 50 to 70 standard years." Mara frowned behind her helmet visor. "Any life signs?" "Negative, Major. Structure appears abandoned." She considered for a moment. "Colleen, take a collection team and secure samples from the exterior. I want material composition, radiation levels, and any biological traces. Scout team, establish a perimeter. Stay alert." As Colleen's team approached the structure, Mara surveyed the surrounding landscape. Despite the brutal conditions, something about this place felt inhabited. Not just by primitive natives huddled in settlements, but by something more, something watching. "Major," Colleen's voice crackled through the comm. "You should see this." Mara made her way to where Colleen stood by the structure's entry point, a rectangular opening partially blocked by ice and snow. The lieutenant was examining something etched into the metal beside the doorway. "What am I looking at, Lieutenant?" Colleen pointed to a series of symbols carved into the metal. "It's Earth Standard, Major, early 21st century." Mara leaned closer. The symbols were weathered but legible. "Terra Prime Outpost, Alpha Est, 2189. We are the precious." "We are the precious," Mara read aloud, confusion evident in her voice. "What does that mean?" Before Colleen could respond, a warning blared through their comm systems. "Perimeter breach. Multiple contacts approaching from the south." Mara spun around her hand, automatically reaching for the pulse rifle secured to her exosuit. "Report." "Humanoid figures, Major," came the urgent reply from the perimeter team. "At least 30 moving fast, faster than should be possible in these conditions." "Defensive positions," Mara ordered. "Colleen, get your team back to the shuttle. Prepare for immediate evacuation." The scout mechs formed a protective semicircle, weapons powered and ready. Mara joined them, her tactical display, showing the approaching contacts a swarm of red dots, moving with alarming speed across the ice. "Visual confirmation," reported one of the scout operators. They're human, Major, but they're moving without exosuits or visible protection." "Impossible," Mara muttered. No human could survive Terra Prime's surface temperatures without protective gear. And then she saw them figures emerging from the swirling snow, clothed not in technological survival suits, but in what appeared to be animal hides and rough-spun fabrics. Their faces were exposed to the bitter cold, yet they showed no signs of discomfort or distress. They moved with a fluid grace that seemed to defy the harsh environment, spread out in what was unmistakably a battle formation. "Impossible," she repeated more to herself than to her team. The lead figure raised something in his hand, a primitive projectile weapon by the look of it. Mara almost laughed at the absurdity. What damage could such an antiquated device do against Zolorian battle armor? "Hold position," she ordered her team. "Do not engage unless—" The world exploded in light and sound. Mara was thrown backward, her exosuit's internal systems momentarily overwhelmed by the force of the blast. When her vision cleared, she saw with horror that 3 of the scout mechs lay in smoking ruins, their armored shells torn open like paper. "Return fire!" she shouted, struggling to her feet. "Full defensive protocols!" The remaining mechs opened fire, their energy weapons cutting bright swaths through the falling snow. But the natives were fast, impossibly fast, dodging and weaving between the energy blasts with inhuman agility. "Fall back to the shuttle," Mara ordered, firing her pulse rifle at an approaching native. The shot hit its mark, but to her shock, the figure merely staggered before continuing its advance. All around her, chaos erupted. More explosions rocked the ice as the natives hurled devices that somehow penetrated Zolorian armor. Scout mechs fell one after another, their operators frantically trying to compensate for an enemy that moved too quickly and struck too hard. Colleen's voice crackled through the comm. "Major, we're cut off from the shuttle. They've circled around behind us." Mara swore, spinning, to see a second group of natives approaching from the direction of their landing site. "How many?" "At least 40 more," Colleen reported, her voice steady despite the dire circumstances. "They've disabled our perimeter defenses somehow." In that moment, Mara knew they had gravely underestimated the inhabitants of Terra Prime. These were not primitives to be catalogued and contained. They were warriors, dangerous and determined. "Orbital support," she shouted into her comm. "Command, this is Major Thorne requesting immediate orbital strike on my position." Static answered her call. The natives must have deployed some kind of communication jamming technology. A massive explosion to her right sent Mara tumbling across the ice. When she regained her footing, she saw the last of her scout mechs torn apart by what appeared to be nothing more sophisticated than spears and primitive explosive devices. "Colleen," she called desperately. "Colleen, report." "Still here, Major," came the strained reply. "But we're surrounded. These people, they're not what intelligence said they would be." Mara watched in disbelief as the natives closed in around her remaining team. They moved with a synchronized precision that spoke of military training, their eyes clear and determined behind the protective goggles they wore. One of them stepped forward, a tall figure with broad shoulders and a face marked by ritual scarring. He carried no visible weapon, yet something about him radiated danger more acutely than any armed soldier Mara had ever encountered. "Zolorian." He spoke, his voice carrying easily across the wind. "You trespass on sacred ground." Mara's translator implant rendered his words perfectly. He was speaking an archaic form of Earth standard. "We come in peace," she replied, the standard Zolorian opening to first contact situations. "We seek only to observe and document." The man's laugh was harsh like ice cracking. "You come to take as your kind always does. But Terra Prime is not yours to claim. We are the precious, and we will not be harvested." Before Mara could respond, a piercing sound cut through the air, a retreat signal from the Zolorian command ship in orbit. Somewhere in the chaos, someone had managed to re-establish communications. "This isn't over," Mara said, backing away slowly. "The Zolorian Empire spans 1,000 worlds. We will return." The native leader's expression didn't change. "And we will be waiting." As emergency evacuation pods descended from the sky, Mara watched the natives retreating into the swirling snow, vanishing as quickly as they had appeared. The defeat stung worse than the freezing air on her exposed face, where her helmet had been damaged. A Zolorian battalion, elite soldiers in the most advanced armor the Empire could produce, had been decimated by what intelligence had classified as primitives. As Mara was lifted toward the safety of orbit, she made a silent vow she would return to Terra Prime, and next time, she would bring the full might of the Zolorian military with her. These precious ones had humiliated her, and that was something she could not allow to stand. The debriefing room aboard the Zolorian command vessel, Indomitable, was silent as Mara concluded her report. Around the holographic table sat the ship's senior officers, their expressions ranging from disbelief to outrage. "You mean to tell me," Fleet Commander Valen said slowly, "that a single team of natives humans no less destroyed 8 assault-class scout mechs and killed 15 of our personnel?" Mara stood rigidly at attention, her face a mask of professional composure, despite the shame burning inside her. "Yes, Commander. They employed tactics and weaponry that our intelligence assessments failed to predict." "Impossible," muttered Strategic Officer Eli Kovan. "Our mechs are equipped with reactive armor, capable of withstanding direct hits from military-grade explosives. No primitive projectile weapon should have been able to penetrate them." "Nevertheless," Mara replied, "that is precisely what occurred. I saw it with my own eyes. These people moved with inhuman speed and struck with incredible force. Their weapons may have appeared primitive, but their effectiveness is undeniable." Fleet Commander Valen leaned forward, his cybernetically enhanced eyes focusing on Mara with uncomfortable intensity. "And you believe they called themselves the Precious?" "Yes, Commander. The phrase was engraved on their outpost and spoken by their leader." A murmur went around the table. The designation Precious was supposed to be an internal Zolorian classification, not something natives would call themselves. "There's something else," Colleen Voss spoke up from her position beside Mara. "The genetic samples we managed to collect before the attack show anomalies. These humans have been modified at the cellular level, enhanced musculature, reinforced skeletal structure, and extraordinary cold tolerance. They're engineered for survival in Terra Prime's environment." "Engineered by whom?" demanded Kovan. "Intelligence reports indicate no advanced genetic technology on this world." "Unknown," Colleen admitted. "But the modifications are sophisticated beyond what most frontier worlds would be capable of." Commander Valen stared at the holographic display showing the ice fields where the disastrous encounter had taken place. "Recommendations, Major Thorne." Mara didn't hesitate. "We return in force, Commander. A full battle group with air support and heavy armor. We need to ascertain the full military capabilities of these people and neutralize any threat they pose to future Zolorian operations." Valen nodded slowly. "Agreed. But we proceed with caution. If these precious ones can destroy our scout mechs, we need to understand how before we commit additional resources." He turned to Colleen. "Lieutenant Voss, I want a complete analysis of those genetic samples. If these humans have been modified, I want to know their weaknesses." "Yes, Commander." "Major Thorne," Valen continued, "you will lead a reconnaissance mission. Take a stealth team and infiltrate the ice basin. I want intelligence on their numbers, weapons, and defensive capabilities. No engagement unless absolutely necessary. Understood?" "Understood, Commander." Mara felt a surge of determination. This was her chance to redeem herself, to prove that the defeat had been a fluke, a result of faulty intelligence, not a failure of leadership. As the meeting disbanded, Colleen approached Mara in the corridor outside. "Mara," she said quietly, using her friend's first name now that they were alone. "Something doesn't add up. Those people knew we were coming. They were prepared." Mara frowned. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not sure, but that outpost, it was old, early colony era. Someone sent those people to Terra Prime long before the Zolorian Empire even existed in its current form." "Whoever they were, they're dead now," Mara replied firmly. "And their descendants have forgotten whatever advanced technology their ancestors possessed. They're fighting with spears and primitive explosives, Colleen." Spears and explosives that tore through our armor, like it was fabric," Colleen pointed out. I think we need to consider the possibility that there's more to these precious ones than we understand. Mara's jaw tightened. Then we'll find out what it is, and we'll use it to defeat them. 3 days later, Mara led a 6-person stealth team back to the surface of Terra Prime. They descended under cover of a magnetic storm that would mask their approach from any detection systems the natives might possess. Their mission was clear: gather intelligence on the settlement detected southeast of the original landing zone, assess the natives' military capabilities, and return to the Indomitable without engagement. They landed 15 kilometers from the target in specialized stealth pods, designed to minimize thermal and acoustic signatures. As Mara emerged into the frigid air of Terra Prime, she felt a renewed determination. This time, she would not underestimate her enemy. "Activate thermal dampening and optical camouflage," she ordered her team. "Move out in standard recon formation. Keep comm chatter to a minimum." The team moved across the ice like ghosts, their advanced stealth suits rendering them nearly invisible against the white landscape. Unlike the bulky exosuits they had worn during the first expedition, these were sleek, form-fitting garments that sacrificed some environmental protection for superior mobility and stealth capability. As they approached the coordinates of the settlement, Mara signaled for the team to take cover behind a ridge of ice. Carefully, she crawled to the edge and peered over. Below them lay not the primitive collection of huts intelligence had predicted, but a sophisticated settlement partially built into the ice itself. Structures of metal and some transparent material rose from the frozen ground, connected by enclosed walkways. People moved between buildings, with purpose, many carrying what appeared to be tools or weapons. "Magnify and record," Mara whispered to her tactical officer, who activated the enhanced imaging systems in their visors. The images revealed details that sent a chill down Mara's spine, unrelated to the freezing temperature. The settlement was organized with military precision. Defensive positions were clearly visible at regular intervals, and what appeared to be weapons emplacements were positioned to cover all approaches. "Those aren't just hunting tools," observed her tactical officer. "Those are systematically designed weapons. Look at the standardization they're being mass-produced." Mara nodded grimly. "Let's move closer. I want to get audio if possible." They crept down the ridge using ice formations for cover as they approached the perimeter of the settlement. As they drew nearer, Mara could see signs that contradicted everything intelligence had told them about Terra Prime's inhabitants. These people wore simple clothing, yes, but they moved with the discipline and awareness of trained soldiers. Children as young as what appeared to be 6 or 7 standard years were engaged in what could only be combat drills in an open area at the center of the settlement. "Audio capture initiated," whispered the communications specialist. "We're picking up conversations from the nearest structure." Mara listened through her comm implant as the specialist filtered and enhanced the captured sound. "Third perimeter breach this season," a male voice was saying. "The ice wolves are growing bolder." "It's not just the wolves," replied a female voice. "Something disturbed the northern sensors 3 days ago. The council thinks it might have been them." "Zolorians," the male voice dropped to a near whisper. "Here already." "Nothing confirmed," the woman replied. "But Outpost Alpha sent a warning ping before going silent. Commander Saul has ordered increased patrols and combat readiness." "Then it begins," the man said, his voice carrying a weight of resignation. "Just as the first generation predicted." Mara signaled for her team to retreat to a safer distance. Once they were clear of immediate detection range, she gathered them in the shelter of a deep ice crevasse. "This changes our assessment," she told them. "These aren't primitives who got lucky against our scout team. They're an organized military force with advanced warning systems and command structure." "But where did they get the technology?" asked her tactical officer. "There's no evidence of manufacturing capabilities or power generation infrastructure that could support advanced weapons development." "I don't know," Mara admitted. "But I intend to find out. We need to locate their command center, this council they mentioned." For the next 48 hours, the stealth team observed the settlement, mapping movement patterns and identifying key structures. They discovered that what had initially appeared to be a single settlement was actually the hub of a network tunnel. Entrances around the perimeter suggested underground passageways connecting to other locations. On the third day, as they were preparing to withdraw with their intelligence, the tactical officer spotted something unusual. "Major," he called softly. "Movement to the north. Large group approaching the settlement." Mara adjusted her position to get a better view. Through her enhanced visor, she could see a column of people marching across the ice, at least 60 strong. They moved in perfect formation despite the difficult terrain, and even at this distance, Mara could see they were heavily armed. Patrol returning suggested one of her team. "No," Mara replied, a knot forming in her stomach. "Look at their direction of approach. They're coming from the area where we first encountered the natives, where we lost our scout team." As the column drew closer to the settlement, figures emerged to meet them. A tall individual, possibly the leader Mara had encountered before, stepped forward as the column halted. The leader of the new arrivals approached, and the two clasped arms in what appeared to be a ritual greeting. Mara activated her audio enhancement system, straining to capture the conversation. "The northern outpost is secured," reported the newly arrived leader. "We recovered what we could from the Zolorian wreckage. Their technology is advanced but fragile." "And the survivors?" asked the settlement leader. "None. They fought well but were unprepared for our environment and our strength." The settlement leader nodded. "They will return, with greater numbers and heavier weapons." "Let them come," replied the other with chilling confidence. "Terra Prime has repelled invaders before. The precious will endure." Mara had heard enough. She signaled for her team to begin their withdrawal. They needed to return to the Indomitable with this intelligence immediately. The situation on Terra Prime was far more complex and far more dangerous than anyone had realized. As they made their way back to their extraction point, Mara's mind raced with questions. Who were these people really? How had they developed such military discipline on a frontier world? And what did they mean about Terra Prime repelling invaders before? One thing was certain: the Zolorian Empire had stumbled onto something unexpected on this frozen world. Something that might prove far more valuable or far more dangerous than mere mineral resources. Back aboard the Indomitable, Mara's report created a storm of activity. Fleet Commander Valen immediately ordered a full battle group to prepare for planetfall, while intelligence officers pored over the data the stealth team had collected. "Your assessment, Major Thorne?" Valen asked, as they stood before a holographic display of the settlement and surrounding terrain. "They're preparing for us, Commander," Mara replied frankly. "They have defensive capabilities we don't fully understand, and they possess a level of physical enhancement that gives them significant advantages in their environment. But they lack our technology," Valen pointed out. "No energy weapons, no air power, no orbital capabilities." "True," Mara conceded. "But they destroyed our scout mechs with what appeared to be primitive weapons. We should not underestimate them again." Valen nodded thoughtfully. "What about this council they mentioned and this Commander Saul?" "Unknown," Mara admitted. "But their command structure suggests organization beyond what we'd expect from an isolated colony. And the reference to a first generation implies a foundational history, perhaps the original colonists who established that outpost we found." Lieutenant Voss, Valen, turned to Colleen, who had joined them for the briefing. "What have you learned from the genetic samples?" Colleen stepped forward, her expression troubled. "The modifications are extensive, Commander. These humans have been engineered at the genetic level for enhanced strength speed and environmental adaptation. Their muscle density is approximately 3 times that of standard humans, and their metabolic efficiency in cold environments is unprecedented." "Could such modifications have developed naturally?" Valen asked. "Impossible," Colleen stated firmly. "This is deliberate engineering and sophisticated work at that. It would require advanced biotechnology and generations of selective enhancement." Mara frowned. "Could they be descended from an early military colonization project? Earth sent out specialized colony ships before the formation wars." "Possible," Colleen conceded. But there's no record of Terra Prime receiving such a colony. This world wasn't even in Earth's database until Zalorian scouts charted it 70 years ago. Someone wanted these people hidden, Mara concluded. Someone put them here, enhanced them, and gave them the means to defend themselves. Against whom? Valen wondered aloud. Perhaps against us, Mara suggested. Or against whoever they thought might follow them. Valen's expression hardened. Regardless of their origin, these precious ones now stand in the way of Zalorian expansion. The Empire has claimed Terra Prime, and we will secure it. He turned to the tactical display. Major Thorne, I'm putting you in command of the ground assault. You will lead 3 battalions of heavy armor supported by air units. Your objective is to secure the settlement and establish a Zalorian presence on Terra Prime. And the natives, Commander? Mara asked carefully. Standard protocol for resistant populations. Valen replied, his tone leaving no room for debate. Offer them the opportunity to relocate to a reservation zone. If they refuse, he let the implication hang in the air. Mara nodded stiffly. Understood, Commander. When do we deploy? 36 hours. Prepare your troops, Major. I expect this operation to be swift and decisive. As the meeting dispersed, Colleen caught up with Mara in the corridor. Mara, wait. Mara paused, noting the concern in her friend's voice. What is it, Colleen? These people, the modifications to their genetic structure? There's something I didn't mention in the briefing. Colleen glanced around to ensure they were alone. Their enhancements aren't just physical. There are markers suggesting neural modifications as well. Meaning what? Mara asked, a sense of unease growing. Meaning they may have capabilities we can't anticipate. Increased cognitive processing, enhanced sensory perception. Potentially even limited telepathic abilities. Mara stared at her friend. Telepathy. That's theoretical at best, Colleen. No human genetic program has successfully. I know what the official records say, Colleen interrupted. But I've seen the markers before in classified research I was part of before joining your unit. These are the same patterns we were trying to develop in the Nexus Project. The Nexus Project was shut down 20 years ago, Mara pointed out. Deemed too dangerous and ethically problematic. By the Zalorian Science Council? Yes, Colleen agreed. But what if someone else continued the research? What if they succeeded where we failed? Mara felt a chill that had nothing to do with her recent time on Terra Prime's frozen surface. If you're right, what are we facing down there? I don't know, Colleen admitted. But I think we need to reconsider a direct assault. If these people can coordinate telepathically, traditional military tactics may be useless against them. Mara's jaw tightened. I have my orders, Colleen. 3 battalions of heavy armor will deploy in 36 hours. And if you're walking into a trap, then we'll spring it and deal with the consequences. Mara placed a hand on her friend's shoulder. But I appreciate the warning. I'll keep it in mind during the operation. As Mara walked away, heading to the armory to begin preparations for the assault, Colleen watched her go with a troubled expression. Something about this mission felt wrong, deeply, fundamentally wrong. Like they were missing a crucial piece of information that would change everything they thought they knew about Terra Prime and its inhabitants. The deployment was massive, the largest Zalorian military operation on a frontier world in over a decade. 3 battalions of heavy armor, including the new Titan-class assault vehicles, descended through Terra Prime's atmosphere in a precisely choreographed landing sequence. Accompanying them were squadrons of aerial combat drones and specialized cold-weather infantry units. Mara stood in the command module of her behemoth mobile fortress, watching as the tactical display showed her forces spreading out across the ice basin in attack formation. The massive vehicle beneath her 90 meters of armored destruction moved with surprising grace across the frozen terrain, its weight distributed by repulsor fields that prevented it from breaking through the ice. All units in position, Major, reported her executive officer. Perimeter established. No sign of native response yet. Mara frowned. That was unexpected. Their landing had been deliberate and provocative, No attempt at stealth or surprise. The natives should have reacted by now. Thermal and motion scans of the settlement, she asked. Minimal activity detected. Population estimate is well below previous observations. A warning bell sounded in Mara's mind. They've evacuated, she realized aloud. They knew we were coming. Impossible, her executive officer objected. Our deployment was classified. Even the ship's crew didn't know the timing until 6 hours ago. Nevertheless, Mara countered, they're gone, or at least most of them are. She studied the tactical display, considering her options. Advance the perimeter. I want scout units at the settlement boundary in 10 minutes. Full sensor sweep. Look for subsurface structures, hidden entrances, anything unusual. As her forces moved forward, Mara felt the tension building in her chest. Something wasn't right. The natives had demonstrated too much military acumen to simply abandon their settlement without a plan. Major called her communications officer. We're picking up a transmission. It's being broadcast on all frequencies. Source. The settlement, ma'am. It's a simple audio signal. Put it through, Mara ordered. A clear, calm voice filled the command module. Zolorian forces. This is Commander Rian Sol of Terra Prime Defense. Your presence on our world constitutes an act of war. You have 30 minutes to withdraw or face the consequences of your aggression. Rian Sol, the name they had heard during their reconnaissance. Mara's jaw tightened. Can we locate the transmission source? Working on it, Major. The signal appears to be bouncing between multiple points within the settlement. Mara considered the ultimatum. 30 minutes. It was clearly a delaying tactic, but for what purpose? What could these people possibly do against the overwhelming force she had brought to bear? Continue the advance, she ordered. I want that settlement secured. If Commander Sol wishes to negotiate, he can do so from a position of Zolorian authority. Her forces moved forward methodically, heavy armor units forming a wedge with infantry support behind them. Scout drones flew ahead, mapping the approach and scanning for potential threats. 25 minutes into their advance, with the settlement's outer structures now clearly visible, the first scout drone went dark. Drone 7 is offline, reported the sensor officer. No warning, no damage report, just gone. Mechanical failure. Mara suggested, though she didn't believe it herself. Negative. Systems were operating at optimal levels. It's as if it simply disappeared. Before Mara could respond, a second drone went offline, then a third. Within moments, all forward reconnaissance was blind. Major, her executive officer's voice, held an edge of concern. Something's moving out there. Mara looked at the tactical display. At the perimeter of their sensor range, multiple contacts had appeared moving toward their position at high speed. Numbers, she demanded. At least 200 approaching from all directions. They're on foot, Major. Mara almost laughed. On foot, against armored vehicles and aerial support. Whatever these precious ones might be, they were still fundamentally human. And no human, no matter how genetically enhanced, could stand against Zolorian heavy armor. Battle formation, she ordered. All units prepare to engage. Aerial support target, lead elements, and fire on my command. The approaching figures became visible on the forward cameras, humans running across the ice with incredible speed, many carrying what appeared to be spears or other primitive weapons. Some wore what might be light armor, but nothing that could withstand modern weapons. Fire, Mara commanded. The air erupted with the sound of energy weapons and conventional explosives as the Zolorian forces unleashed their full power. Beams of coherent light sliced across the ice, while explosive shells created plumes of steam and shattered ice where they hit. And yet somehow the natives kept coming. "They're evading our fire," exclaimed the weapons officer in disbelief. "Their movement patterns are... I've never seen anything like it." On the display, Mara could see the truth of his words. The Terra Prime forces moved with uncanny coordination, seemingly anticipating each shot before it was fired. They dodged energy beams that should have incinerated them and sidestepped explosions with impossible precision. "Switch to area denial patterns," Mara ordered. They can't dodge if there's nowhere to go. The heavy armor units adjusted their firing solutions, creating overlapping fields of destruction that should have been impossible to navigate. And still they came. The first line of natives reached the Zolorian perimeter, and chaos erupted. Despite all logic and military doctrine, these lightly armed humans engaged heavily armored vehicles in close combat. "This is madness," muttered Mara's executive officer as they watched the battle unfold. "They should be obliterated." Instead, the tactical display showed Zolorian units going offline one after another. A scout mech reported a native attaching some kind of device to its leg joint before the transmission cut out. An infantry squad screamed about impossible strength as their position was overrun. "All units fall back and regroup," Mara ordered. "Defensive perimeter around the command vehicles. We need to consolidate our forces." As her troops attempted to execute the order, Mara watched in growing horror as the battle descended into something resembling ancient, hand-to-hand combat, more than modern warfare. The natives were inside their perimeter now, among their vehicles, rendering much of the Zolorians' technological advantage useless. "Major," her sensor officer called out, panic edging into his voice. "Multiple subsurface contacts there coming up from beneath us." Mara spun to look at the ground-penetrating radar display. Tunnels, dozens of them extended beneath the ice where her forces stood. And from those tunnels poured more of the native warriors. "They lured us in," Mara realized with cold clarity. "This was their plan all along." A massive explosion rocked the behemoth fortress, nearly throwing Mara from her feet. "Damage report." "Lower hull breach, Major. They've penetrated the primary armor layer." "Impossible," Mara whispered. The behemoth's armor was meters thick, designed to withstand direct hits from capital ship weapons. No handheld device should have been able to breach it. Another explosion larger than the first sent systems throughout the command module into emergency shutdown. Emergency lighting bathed the crew in red as primary power failed. "Reroute to auxiliary systems," Mara ordered. "Get weapons back online." "Working on it, Major, but whatever they're using is interfering with our power distribution network." On the external cameras, those still functioning, Mara could see her forces in retreat. Zolorian soldiers, the pride of the Empire, running from what should have been a vastly inferior enemy. Heavy armor units lay disabled across the battlefield, some torn open in ways that defied explanation. And then she saw him, a figure striding through the chaos with calm purpose. Taller than those around him, wearing what appeared to be ceremonial armor, adorned with symbols Mara didn't recognize. In his hand, he carried what looked like nothing more than a metal staff. "Magnify," she ordered, pointing to the figure on the display. The image zoomed in, revealing a face marked with ritual scars, the same leader she had encountered during the first expedition. "That's him," she said, more to herself than to her crew. "That's their commander." As if hearing her words across the distance, the figure turned toward the behemoth fortress. For a moment, Mara felt as though he was looking directly at her, despite the armor and technology separating them. He raised his staff, and Mara watched in disbelief as the simple metal rod began to glow with an inner light. "All personnel brace for impact," she shouted, but her warning came too late. The world seemed to slow as the staff swung downward. A wave of energy, not electricity, not plasma. Something else entirely radiated outward from the point of impact as it struck the ground. The ice beneath the behemoth fortress shattered not into chunks, but into a fine crystalline dust that offered no support. The massive vehicle tipped, its repulsor fields failing as power systems overloaded. Mara grabbed for a support rail as the command module tilted at a sickening angle. All around her, crew members fought to secure themselves and their equipment. "Emergency thrusters," she ordered. "Stabilize us." "No response from propulsion systems," came the desperate reply. "We're going down, Major." The behemoth fortress pride of the Zolorian ground forces slid into the chasm that had opened beneath it, its massive bulk disappearing into the depths of Terra Prime's ice sheet. Mara's last conscious thought before impact was a single word: precious. She awoke to pain and the sound of dripping water. Opening her eyes, Mara found herself lying on a metal floor, her head throbbing and body aching from numerous injuries. The air was surprisingly warm compared to Terra Prime's surface temperatures. "You're awake, good." Mara turned her head to find Colleen Voss, sitting beside her, applying a medical patch to a wound on her own arm. "Colleen," Mara croaked, her throat dry. "What happened? Where are we?" "Underground," Colleen replied simply. "The natives brought us here after the battle. What's left of us, anyway." Mara pushed herself up to a sitting position, wincing at the pain that shot through her ribs. Looking around, she saw they were in a large chamber carved from the ice and reinforced with metal supports. A dozen other Zalorian soldiers lay on similar mats around the room, most unconscious, some receiving treatment from what appeared to be native medical personnel. "The battle?" Mara asked, though she already knew the answer. "We lost," Colleen said flatly. "Completely. 3 battalions of heavy armor supporting infantry aerial units all gone. A few managed to retreat to orbit, but most were captured or killed. The defeat was inconceivable. The Zalorian Empire had not suffered such a military disaster in over a century." "How?" Mara asked. "How could they possibly—" "Major Thorne." The voice came from the entrance to the chamber. Mara looked up to see a man standing there, not the scarred warrior from the battlefield, but an older figure with white hair, and the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. "I am Dr. Rian Sol," he introduced himself, "Commander of Terra Prime Defense and Chief Scientist of the Council." Mara struggled to her feet, refusing to remain sitting in the presence of her captor. "What do you want from us, Sol?" "Understanding primarily," he replied, entering the chamber fully. "And perhaps an end to this unnecessary conflict." "You attacked Zalorian forces without provocation," Mara countered. "You destroyed an official survey mission, and then ambushed a military response." Sol's expression remained calm. "You came to our world, uninvited, Major Thorne. You intended to claim Terra Prime as a Zalorian possession to exploit its resources and relegate its people to reservations. We merely defended what is ours." "How?" Mara demanded. "How did you defeat our forces? You have primitive weapons, no energy technology, no heavy armor of your own." Sol smiled slightly. "Is that what you believe?" He gestured toward the door. "Perhaps it's time you saw the truth about Terra Prime and its people. If you're able to walk—" Mara nodded stiffly, ignoring the pain in her ribs. "Colleen comes with me." "Of course," Sol agreed. "Lieutenant Voss's medical expertise has already proven valuable to our physicians. Her perspective would be welcome." They followed Sol through corridors carved from the ice, reinforced with metal, and illuminated by lights that seemed to glow from the walls themselves. As they walked, Mara noted the sophisticated infrastructure, climate control systems, communication panels, security measures that belied the primitiveness she had expected. This facility, she began, unable to contain her curiosity. "One of many," Sol replied. "Terra Prime's surface is inhospitable, as you've discovered. We live primarily underground in a network of installations that span much of the northern hemisphere. But your settlement, the one we observed—" "A trading post and cultural center," Sol explained. "We maintain connection to our surface traditions even as we evolve. The settlement you saw represents only a tiny fraction of our civilization." They entered a large circular chamber, dominated by a holographic display, showing what appeared to be Terra Prime's geological structure. Around the display stood several natives in simple but elegant clothing, engaged in quiet discussion. "The Council," Sol introduced them, "our governing body." The council members turned as they entered, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. One of them, a severe-looking woman with silver streaks in her dark hair, stepped forward. "Is this wise, Rian?" she asked, eyeing Mara with suspicion. "Bringing Zalorians to the heart." "Elder Kayla." Sol addressed her respectfully. "Major Thorne deserves to understand what she faces. Knowledge may prevent further bloodshed." Kala studied Mara for a long moment before nodding curtly. Proceed then, but she remains your responsibility. Saul guided them to the central display. Terra Prime Major Thorn, not as your survey teams mapped it, but as it truly is. The hologram shifted, revealing layer upon layer of underground structures, vast chambers, transportation networks, energy generation facilities, and what appeared to be massive agricultural zones illuminated by artificial sunlight. Impossible, Mara whispered. Our scans would have detected this. Your scanning technology is based on principles we understand well, Saul replied, and have learned to mask ourselves against. Terra Prime is not a primitive outpost, Major. It is a fortress world designed and built to be invisible to exactly the kind of imperial expansion your Zaloria represents. Colleen stepped closer to the display, her scientific curiosity evident. These energy signatures, they're like nothing I've seen before. How are you generating power at this scale without fusion or antimatter? Saul smiled approvingly at her question. Terra Prime sits at the convergence of natural energy currents, what your scientists might call geomagnetic flux lines. We've developed technology to harness this energy without depleting or damaging the planet. And your weapons? Mara asked, thinking of the staff that had brought down her behemoth fortress. The technology that allowed you to penetrate our armor. In answer, Sol led them to an adjacent chamber. Inside, natives were engaged in what appeared to be martial arts practice, but unlike any Mara had seen before. As they moved, the air around their limbs seemed to distort, and when they struck practice targets, the impact released visible waves of energy. We call it resonance manipulation, Saul explained. The ability to align one's bioelectric field with the natural resonance frequencies of matter. With training, our warriors can identify the frequency of any material, including your armor, and disrupt its molecular cohesion. Mara watched as a young woman approached a block of what appeared to be solid metal. She placed her hand upon it, closed her eyes in concentration, and then simply pushed. The metal parted around her fingers like clay. This is why you call yourselves precious, Mara realized suddenly. This ability. Saul nodded. Partially. The term has multiple meanings in our culture. We are precious to Terra Prime, as it is to us. We form a symbiotic relationship with the planet that sustains us. But yes, our abilities, which we have cultivated over generations, make us uniquely valuable, and potentially dangerous to those who would seek to control us. The genetic modifications, Colleen spoke up. They're designed to enhance this resonance ability, aren't they? Very perceptive, Lieutenant Voss, Saul acknowledged. The original colonists of Terra Prime were part of a research initiative studying human potential beyond the limits of conventional science. When Earth's political climate turned against such research, they came here to continue their work in isolation and created a society of super soldiers. Mara concluded the military implications immediately clear to her. Saul frowned. That is a Zalorian perspective, Major. We see ourselves as evolved humans living in harmony with our environment and developing our natural potential. We have no interest in conquest or expansion. Until now, you've had no need to reveal yourselves, Mara pointed out. But now that Zaloria knows of your existence, your isolation is over. The Empire will not simply abandon its claim to Terra Prime because of one military defeat. We are aware, Saul replied gravely, which is why we wished you to see this to understand what continued aggression would mean. We have existed in secrecy for generations, Major Thorn. We have observed the rise and fall of interstellar powers. We chose isolation not from fear, but from wisdom. Mara considered his words, her mind racing with the implications of what she had seen. Terra Prime was not the primitive world they had believed it to be. These people possessed technology and abilities that could challenge even Zalorian military supremacy. A prolonged conflict would be devastating for both sides. What happens now? She asked finally. That, Saul said, depends on what you report to your superiors when we release you. Mara's eyes widened in surprise. You're letting us go? Of course. We have no desire to hold prisoners or provoke further conflict. You and your surviving personnel will be transported to the surface, where your rescue ships can retrieve you. And if we return with an even larger force, Mara challenged. Sol's expression remained serene. Then we will defend ourselves again with increasingly dramatic results. What you witnessed on the surface was restraint, Major Thorne. We could have destroyed your forces utterly, but we chose to disable, rather than annihilate where possible. The implications of his statement sent a chill through Mara. If what she had seen was restraint, there is another path, Sol continued. Zaloria could recognize Terra Prime's sovereignty and establish diplomatic relations instead of military conquest. There is much our peoples could learn from each other if approached with respect rather than dominance. Mara thought of the War Council of Fleet Commander Valen and his commitment to Zalorian expansion. Would they listen to her? Would they believe what she had seen? I cannot speak for the Empire, she said finally, but I will report what I've witnessed accurately. Sol nodded. That is all we ask. He turned to one of the council members. Prepare the transport for Major Thorne and her people. They will return to the surface at dawn. As they were led back to the medical chamber, Colleen leaned close to Mara. Do you think they'll listen? She whispered. Mara considered the question seriously. The evidence will be undeniable. 3 battalions lost, our best technology defeated. They'll have to reconsider their approach. And if they don't... Mara thought of the native warrior tearing through Zalorian armor with a mere gesture of underground cities, hidden from their most advanced detection systems, of an entire civilization that had developed in secret, while possessing capabilities that defied conventional understanding. Then the Zalorian Empire may have finally met its match, she replied softly. The journey back to the Indomitable was tense and silent. Mara sat in the evacuation shuttle, surrounded by the battered remnants of her command, each lost in their own thoughts about what they had experienced on Terra Prime. The defeat weighed heavily on all of them elite Zalorian forces, humbled by what they had dismissed as primitives. Fleet Commander Valen met them in the shuttle bay, his cybernetic eyes scanning each returning soldier, as if searching for some explanation for the disaster. Major Thorne, he acknowledged stiffly. You and your senior officers will report to the strategy room immediately. The War Council has convened an emergency session via quantum link. The strategy room was austere and coldly efficient, dominated by a large holographic projector in the center. Already present in the form of shimmering projections were the 5 members of the Zalorian War Council, the highest military authority in the Empire. Their expressions ranged from concern to outright anger. Major Thorne began High Commander Dareth, the senior member of the Council. We have reviewed the fragmentary data transmitted during your engagement with the Terra Prime natives. To say it is disturbing would be an understatement. Mara stood at attention, her back straight, despite her injuries. The situation on Terra Prime is not as our intelligence suggested, High Commander. The natives possess capabilities and technology far beyond our initial assessment. So we gathered from the destruction of 3 battalions of our finest troops, replied Commander Elix, her tone acid. Explain how this was possible, Major. Over the next hour, Mara provided a detailed account of everything she had witnessed and learned: the underground civilization, the resonance manipulation abilities, the genetic modifications, and Dr. Sol's offer of diplomatic relations. Colleen supplemented her report with scientific analysis of the natives' abilities based on her observations. When they finished, silence filled the room. The War Council members exchanged glances, their surprise evident, even through the quantum link projections. If what you report is accurate, High Commander Dareth said finally, Terra Prime represents both a significant threat and a potentially valuable asset to the Empire. With respect, High Commander, Mara responded, the people of Terra Prime have made it clear they have no interest in becoming an imperial asset. They desire recognition of their sovereignty and peaceful relations. That is not their decision to make, Commander Elix cut in sharply. Terra Prime lies within space claimed by the Zolorian Empire. Its resources and inhabitants fall under Imperial jurisdiction. Mara took a calculated risk. Commander, did you not hear my report? These people destroyed 3 battalions of our best forces, while barely exerting themselves. They possess technology we don't understand, and abilities that render our military advantages obsolete. A continued military approach would result in significant Zolorian casualties for potentially little gain. Fleet Commander Valen, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward. What Major Thorne fails to emphasize is that these abilities, this resonance manipulation, represents a technological or biological advancement that could revolutionize our own military capabilities. If we could understand and replicate it, they would never share it with us. Colleen interrupted, then quickly added, Sir, based on my conversations with their scientists, the ability is the result of generations of specific genetic development in concert with their planet's unique energy fields. It can't simply be extracted or copied. The War Council fell into discussion among themselves, their voices lowered as they debated the implications of the report. Finally, High Commander Dareth addressed Mara again. Major Thorne, given your first-hand experience with these precious ones, what course of action would you recommend? Mara had been considering this question since her conversation with Dr. Saul. Her answer now would shape the future relationship between Zoloria and Terra Prime, potentially determining whether thousands more Zolorian soldiers would die in a futile attempt at conquest. I recommend diplomatic engagement, High Commander, she stated firmly. Recognition of Terra Prime's sovereignty and establishment of formal relations. Their civilization has developed in isolation for centuries, but they possess knowledge and abilities that could benefit Zoloria through mutual exchange rather than forced extraction. You suggest we simply abandon our claim to a world within our territorial boundaries, Commander, Elix demanded incredulously. I suggest we recognize reality, Commander, Mara replied. Terra Prime was never truly under our control. Its people have the means to resist us indefinitely, at great cost to our forces. A diplomatic approach offers the possibility of mutual benefit without further Zolorian casualties. The council members exchanged glances again. High Commander Dareth nodded slowly. Your recommendation is noted, Major Thorne. The council will deliberate and issue directives shortly. The projections flickered and disappeared, leaving Mara Colleen and Fleet Commander Valen alone in the strategy room. Valen turned to Mara, his expression unreadable. You realize you may have just ended your career, Major. Advocating retreat is not the Zolorian way. I advocated wisdom, Commander, Mara corrected. There's no honor or advantage in sacrificing Zolorian lives in an unwinnable conflict. Perhaps, Valen conceded. Or perhaps you've been influenced by what you experienced down there. The War Council will take that possibility into account. Before Mara could respond, the holographic projector activated again. High Commander Dareth's image appeared, his expression grave. The Council has reached a decision, he announced without preamble. Zolorian forces will establish a defensive perimeter in orbit around Terra Prime, but will not attempt further ground engagement at this time. Major Thorne, you are hereby appointed Special Envoy to Terra Prime, tasked with initiating diplomatic contact and assessing potential for negotiated settlement. Mara blinked in surprise. She had expected the Council to demand a renewed military effort, not to embrace diplomacy so quickly. The Empire has existed for 2,000 years, Major Thorne, Dareth continued, as if sensing her surprise. It has not survived so long by fighting battles it cannot win. You will return to Terra Prime and make it clear that while Zoloria recognizes their strength, we expect appropriate respect for our position as well. A mutually beneficial relationship is preferable to continued conflict. Understood, High Commander, Mara acknowledged. When do I depart? Immediately. Lieutenant Voss will accompany you as scientific liaison. Establish contact with this Dr. Saul and begin preliminary discussions on terms of recognition and exchange. As Dareth's image faded, Valen turned to Mara with newfound respect in his expression. It seems the Council values your insight after all, Major. Or perhaps they simply recognize that some situations require unconventional approaches. Mara nodded, still processing the unexpected turn of events. The Zolorian Empire didn't become the dominant power in this sector by being inflexible, Commander. Indeed not. Valen gestured toward the door. Your shuttle awaits Envoy Thorn. Represent the Empire well. As Mara and Colleen prepared to return to the planet that had so thoroughly upended their understanding of human capability, Mara found herself reflecting on how quickly her perspective had changed. She had arrived at Terra Prime, seeing its people as resources to be cataloged and controlled. Now she approached them as equals, perhaps even superiors in some respects worthy of diplomatic engagement. You're smiling, Colleen observed as they boarded the shuttle. I wouldn't have expected that after everything we've been through. I was just thinking, Mara replied, about how the term precious has taken on new meaning. From a designation of value as a resource to a recognition of unique worth. Colleen nodded thoughtfully. Do you think peaceful relations are really possible? The Empire isn't known for sharing power. I don't know, Mara admitted. But for the first time in my career, I'm approaching a world not as a conqueror, but as a student. There's something liberating about that. As the shuttle descended toward Terra Prime's icy surface, Mara gazed out at the seemingly barren landscape, now knowing the truth of the civilization hidden beneath. The Zolorian Empire had encountered something unprecedented here, a power that could not be defeated through conventional means, a people who would not submit to imperial authority. What would emerge from this meeting of vastly different civilizations remained to be seen. But one thing was certain, the relationship between Zoloria and Terra Prime would be unlike any in imperial history. And Mara Thorn, once dedicated to conquest, now found herself in the unexpected role of bridge builder between worlds. On the frozen surface below, a small group awaited their arrival, natives of Terra Prime, led by Dr. Ryan Saul. And among them stood the scarred warrior, the one who had single-handedly brought down her behemoth fortress. The precious one, who had shown Mara the limits of Zolorian power and the untapped potential of humanity. As the shuttle touched down on the ice, Mara straightened her uniform and prepared to take her first steps into a new chapter, not just for herself, but for the Zolorian Empire and the remarkable civilization they had discovered on this distant, frozen world. Ready? Colleen asked beside her. Mara nodded, feeling a strange mixture of apprehension and anticipation. Ready. The shuttle door opened, and together they stepped out onto the ice of Terra Prime, no longer as conquerors, but as envoys, seeking understanding of the precious ones and the secrets they had kept hidden for so long.